Recently, I spoke about an officer who was unkind to me whenever I was in county jail. And I hate only telling one side of a story, so I wanted to talk about an officer who was pretty decent, to me specifically, but in general. You see, whenever I was leaving county jail to go to San Quentin and start my prison term, I had asked my lawyer to send a copy of my paperwork, my commitment offense, to me. I'd been advised that it was smart to take something like that with you whenever you went to San Quentin. I hadn't given it a lot of thought, and the fact that it hadn't arrived the night before I transferred to San Quentin, it didn't seem like a big deal at the time. I guess that Officer Sakowitz, we called him Sack for short, he understood how important paperwork could be because he had worked in a prison. So he pulled my paperwork out of the mailbag and actually handed it to me as I was getting onto the bus to go to San Quentin. Under a normal circumstance, this would have been a small kindness, something he probably didn't think about a second time. He knew what prison was like, but paperwork is not the life preserver that it's been made out to be sometimes. Yes, it is important, and whatever your commitment offense is, they're going to find out about it on just any yard you go to. Nowadays, they just Google you, I suppose, but even back then, it was gonna come out. If you showed up without paperwork, which happened a lot, I saw over 100 guys show up to a yard without their paperwork when I was active. It wasn't a big deal. Your celly, or the shot caller for the building, or even the shot caller for the yard, would explain to you that all you had to do was fill out a form and send it to your counselor asking for a copy of your commitment offense. You'd get it within a week, 10 days at the high end, and either the shot caller would come and look at the paperwork, or your celly would get it whenever you got it, and if for some reason it hadn't shown up after a week or two, then they'd get pretty suspicious. They'd start to wonder if maybe you'd went to your counselor and told him, "Don't send me that paperwork, whatever you do." But they watch you get the mail every day, so it's just a done thing that they're going to find out what you're in for. Most places, there's just not that much urgency to it. They say 2 weeks, and they do mean it. You're supposed to find out within 2 weeks what's going on. But I've seen people where it stretched on a little longer because they were trying to get the administration to give them what they wanted. You figure the idea that you're just going to be stabbed on site, that there's no questions asked if you don't have your paperwork whenever you show up on a yard, it wouldn't work. There'd be people who didn't know, like me, but even on top of that, it would give the administration, perhaps the dirty cops, all they'd have to do is just pull your paperwork out of your folder whenever they transferred you. It'd be a death sentence. I had somebody ask me, they thought they were going to be going to prison, and do I need to hoop my paperwork, keister it? Do I need to keep it in my butt? No, no, you don't. It's okay. That's some weird Hollywood stuff. As far as I know, I never met anybody who traveled with their paperwork inside of them. Drugs, hot kites describing hits or gang politics, hell yes, you keep that in the gangster wallet. But paperwork, you just write your counselor and they'll give it to you in a couple of days. The one time where this was going to be an exception and not having my paperwork was going to be a big deal was the reception yard at San Quentin where I landed. It wasn't a normal program. I couldn't tell you why, but they were running a serious and rogue program there at San Quentin. The shot caller, it felt like he wanted problems, like he was stirring the pot. For whatever reason, my walking onto that yard with my paperwork in hand, it really might have made a difference. I've said that I don't think Sack thought about giving me that paperwork again after lunch that day, and I didn't think about it at the time. I was more concerned with the ride to San Quentin, processing into San Quentin, and the idea of being in San Quentin. I didn't think about it at the time, but there was that moment when the shot caller said, "Hey, you got your paperwork, right?" And I went, "Oh yeah, it's right here," and handed it over to him. And that could have been a really important moment in my life. I've heard the analogy that whenever you do an act of kindness, it's like throwing a pebble into a pond, that it makes ripples and you can't know where those ripples will lead. It's true, and it's a beautiful analogy, but it leaves out the fact that whenever you throw a pebble into a pond, you can't know what it is. It may be a pebble of kindness, it may be a boulder of kindness. It might make ripples, or it might make waves, a tsunami. That's the beauty and the magic of life, is that we can't know the final consequences of our actions. If you see the opportunity for a little kindness, then type of thing that you might not think about 20 minutes later, do it. It might be a big deal for somebody else. I always like to think of Princess Diana. Whenever I was very young, I remember it made news that she had shaken the hand of a man who had advanced HIV, he had AIDS. And she'd done it without gloves. This was big news at the time, and anybody who's younger than I am will not understand why. You see, whenever the AIDS epidemic was first becoming a big deal, people believed that you could get it from shaking hands, from kissing, from touching a toilet seat or a doorknob, mosquitoes perhaps. There was a lot of fear around the disease, and by publicly shaking this man's hand, she demystified some of it. I do understand people wanting to keep themselves safe, but imagine the perspective from the AIDS patient, reaching out and being afraid that you're going to get turned down because you're sick. It had to be incredibly dehumanizing. I bet a lot of people just quit reaching out. Thank you for listening to this video, and I'm going to be doing a special video on Monday. I'll still post it at 7:15. After that, I expect that I'll be doing a live stream, and I hope to get an opportunity to speak to some of you then.